What's up, y'all? This is David, and I'm here to give 5 tips that will help you with your vocal mix. A lot of people have been asking me how I mix my vocals, what software I use, and all that stuff. And so I just wanted to kind of go over my process. Tip 1, this is honestly, it's not even a vocal tip thing. It's applicable to anything in regards to audio recording, and it's that you should get a good sounding source. And there's a couple things that go into how you can make your sources sound better. One, it's always important that you are getting a good performance. There's a saying in the mixing community, and it goes something like, you can't polish a turd. And the idea behind that is, you know, if you record a performance that was crap, you can spend all the time you want and it's just not gonna sound good in the end. Number 2, EQ. I'm gonna actually go ahead and open up Ableton. Time to put on my headphones. So I have with me the project file for one of the worship covers I did on Upper Room, What Moves You, and this is the verse. I'll play it for us.
Jesus, Jesus, precious Lord, none on the earth nor heavens above that I have found more beautiful. You are my
EQ process. So I use the Fabfilter Pro-Q2, and it first goes through a little high pass. Now the numbers are going to be different each time depending on what mic you're using, you know, how much distance you got going on, depending on the voice. These numbers, it's really, you know, arbitrary. These numbers are arbitrary. Is that how you say it? I'm so not good at English. Anyway, these numbers are going to be different depending on your situation, so take it with a grain of salt. But I typically tend to low cut around 90 hertz, and that kind of gets rid of all the rumble that we don't need to hear at all. And surprisingly, I don't have too much EQing going on for this take. It's usually low cut and more low cut, and then at the very end I have more tone shaping EQ. And so this is what I have here. Sometimes I would use different EQs, but I love this EQ for what it does. It's very smooth sounding, and that's what it's kind of known for. You can make these wide boosts and cuts, and it doesn't sound weird at all. And so I'm boosting at about 10K at 3 dB, and it's a bit of a broad bandwidth there. And what that does is it adds a little bit of air, and I'm cutting, seems like I'm cutting a lot more low end. And depending on the source, I might actually attenuate those harsh frequencies. It looks like I'm just doing a boost there, and that creates nice airiness and breath, and it kind of creates this sparkle in your vocals. And so that's something I like to do in almost everything. It adds a little bit of brightness, it brings the vocals forward. And I don't have too much EQing going on this particular vocals, but something that I do a lot is cut around 3K, and you can use different EQs. These are probably my 3 main EQs that I use a lot: the Pultec, Pro-Q2 from Fabfilter. Like these three I really love using pretty much every time. This EQ, the Pro-Q2, is more surgical in that it shows, you know, what I'm doing graphically. And what's cool about this is as I'm playing it, I can solo these bands and hear exactly what I'm trying to cut or boost. And so that's a really cool thing. And just the fact that it's pleasing to the eyes, that's pretty big to me, I guess. So this is more surgical EQ. I tend not to do stuff like this. When you have, you know, stuff like this going on where like your EQ looks wild, chances are your recording is just not good. Like if you have to do stuff like this to make your, you know, take sound decent, yeah, chances are it was either recorded in a bad space or the distance was not that great. Something was off. I tend to not, you know, get too surgical, but there's really no rules to these things. You know, if it sounds good, then it is good. I love that saying in music, because some people will say, oh, you have to boost or cut at this frequency every time for male vocals, and that's just nonsense. You know, if it sounds good, and you know, yeah, if it sounds good, it doesn't matter how you got there, you know. But these are things that I do because it gets me to a certain point every time consistently. But by no means are these hard rules that you should follow. So experiment. This is the API 550B. I would love to own one of these in hardware form one day, but for now I don't have money for that. So this is the digital version from Waves, and I just love shaping the tone of my vocals through this EQ. It honestly depends on each application, but most of the time what you would get with vocals is this like radio frequency sound. Here, let me just boost that section and show you what I mean by radio frequency sound.
Jesus, Jesus, precious Lord.
Yeah.
Known on the
So 1.5 to about 3K hertz. That's where you get a lot of harshness in your vocals, and so it doesn't sound harsh in this take, but usually that's what I end up with. And so what I would usually do is around 1.5 to 3K, I would cut about 4 dB, 2 or 4 dB. I try not to do extremes, but you know, this particular EQ, you can honestly boost like a lot and it doesn't sound weird at all. And so this is something I like to do. Once you cut around 1.5 to 3K, like you're gonna notice that it sounds a lot smoother. That's about it for EQ. Third tip for your vocal mix: stack compressors. If you don't know what a compressor does, you can probably YouTube search, Google search what compressors do, and there are people out there who can explain it so much better than I ever could. But these compressors are what I use on pretty much all of my vocal recordings. And this is pretty standard. I would also love to own these units in hardware form, but they're really expensive. And these are plugins that I got with my interface. The idea behind stacking compressors is when you only have one compressor doing all the heavy lifting, when you only have one compressor doing all the work, it's gonna sound really harsh. And so I'll kind of show you what I mean. I'm just gonna turn off what I have here. I'm gonna turn off my compressor here, and I'll just I'll just pull in a compressor from Fabfilter Pro-C2, and let's listen in. I'm just gonna make this, you know, pretty extreme here.
Jesus, Jesus, precious Lord, none on the earth nor heavens above that I have found more beautiful.
Cool. So it doesn't, you know, it doesn't sound awful or anything like that, but you can clearly hear the compressor working. And when you have that build up with each track, your ears can easily pick up on this compression effect. It's like pumping, and you really, you know, make the listener fatigue their ears. And you can really hear the compression working in here. And so the idea of stacking compressors is you're delegating, you're kind of dividing up the work. So in the first stage of the compressor, this is the LA-2A, and it's kind of a slow compressor, and it's known to be smooth sounding, but it's not going to pick up all the fast transients. And so I have it going pretty strong right now.
Jesus, Jesus, precious Lord,
Not even really that strong, actually.
the earth nor heavens above that I have found.
With these compressors, you can really dig into them, and it won't sound that bad.
Oh, just to bless you, I just wanna move your heart. It's all I wanna do.
Yep, so it's already doing a lot. That's about 15 decibels of gain reduction. But with this specific unit, they're known to be really smooth sounding due to their slow time settings. So you'll notice that it doesn't catch all the initial attacks of my voice. And so I stack the second compressor, and this one is known to be a little bit more aggressive and fast, and you can really dial in the time settings here. And this is called the 1176. There's different iterations of this particular compressor, but this one is from Universal Audio. And the way you kind of set it is pretty similar to the LA-2A. This one doesn't, the LA-2A doesn't have a ratio setting, but with the 1176 you can change the ratio here, and basically you set how much you're reducing the gain by changing the input knob. And so now with both of them engaged,
Oh, just to bless you, I just wanna move your heart.
so that second compressor is really bringing the vocal forward, and it sounds a lot more powerful. It sounds a lot thicker, and it'll really bring your vocal forward. And I like stacking compressors for that reason, where you're having a lot of compression to push your vocals forward, but it doesn't sound overwhelmingly compressed. Be careful how different compressors react to one another. And so if I compress the first one a lot, obviously it's not going to hit the second compressor as much. So if I just go ahead,
Oh, just to bless you.
see, I've increased the compression on the first compression, and it's not even hitting the second compressor as much. So watch how they both interact with one another as I decrease the peak reduction in the first compressor.
Oh, just to bless you, I just wanna move your heart. It's all I wanna do.
So there it's playing nicely with one another, and so I'm gonna be relatively happy with that. That's what stacking compressors do. It really brings your vocal forward without it sounding over compressed. So that's what I like to do. Number 4, use your reverb in parallel. What I mean by this is when you have reverb plugins, this is what I used to do back in the day when I didn't know anything. I'll just bring in a reverb plugin. By the way, this is called the Valhalla VintageVerb from Valhalla DSP. These are really, really affordable. It goes for about 50 bucks, I think, per plugin. And the user interface is super simple and it sounds fantastic, especially for the price. And so I probably use this on almost every project. Anyway, what I used to do is I got this dry vocal signal going on, and I'll just drag in my reverb plugin on top, and you know, nothing too critically wrong about that, but
move your heart, it's all I wanna do. I just wanna,
and you know, you can play with the settings there and it sounds okay, but when you use your effects in parallel, you can really dial in how it sounds and you can clean up the mud that you get from your time-based effects. And so I'll show you what I mean by using an effect in parallel. Basically, there's a couple ways you can achieve this. Some people use send and return. In this specific software, Ableton, I can just grab the audio from different channels. So here I'll create a new channel, and I'll call this Reverb. Okay, and what this allows me to do is I can pull the audio from my vocals, and I just have to change the monitoring settings. And what this does is it's pulling the audio. Essentially, you're duplicating the audio. And what you can do is you can bring in that same reverb plugin. So I'm going to drag it away so there's no longer reverb applied on the main vocal channel, and I just applied it to my duplicate signal path. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the mix up to 100%. So what I'm getting now is I'm getting only the wet signal. I'm only getting the reverb signal from that vocal take. So if I let it play, it's gonna sound really like there's gonna be too much reverb. Here, I'll play.
oh, just to bless you.
Sounds like I'm singing in the shower in the bathroom. But what this allows me to do is I can bring down the volume, and I can actually EQ and do a bunch of stuff to my reverb signal. Now that I have the wet reverb signal separated, I can really do a bunch of stuff to it. Let me quit Google Chrome. Okay, so I can do a bunch of stuff to it. First, I'm gonna EQ out the reverb signal. There's a lot of mud going on in there, so.
Oh, just to bless you. I just wanna move your heart.
Cool, so now that I can really shape the EQ of my reverb signal, I'm gonna cut away a lot of this part right here where my vocal sits on. You know, as a male vocal, you're probably gonna sit around this area a lot, and so when you make room for that, you're creating nice width for your vocals without it becoming muddy or too busy sounding. And so what this does is you got the forward sounding dry vocals, and then right underneath it you have the reverb signal. It's just creating nice space without it becoming overwhelming. And so now if we listen in,
oh, just to bless you, I just wanna move your heart, it's all I wanna do.
so that already sounds a lot better compared to just putting the reverb directly onto your dry signal. Number 5, use slapback delays. So I'll show you the second way of achieving a parallel effect. I'm gonna create a return track, and the idea is the same pretty much. You're creating a duplicate signal. I can send whatever I want to this track, and it's just gonna play it back here. The difference, I guess, is you can decide how much you want to send, compared to the other method that I showed you with the reverb, where it just duplicates the original signal. And this one, you can send however much you want to send to this track, particular return track. So I'm gonna send this group right here. This is my vocal group. And then what I'm gonna end up with is I'm just gonna solo this return track to listen in what I'm getting.
Move your heart. It's all.
Great, so seems like I'm getting what I need. What I can do here is I can apply a slapback delay. What is a slapback delay? Essentially, what it is it's a very short time delay. I think they used to do this with the tape delays they had back in the days, and you would basically have a very short distance between the playhead and the record head, and it kind of sounds like you're slapping back and forth. I think that's how you explain it, but I'll just play it for you. Here, this is what it sounds like. I'll solo the vocals.
I just wanna move your heart. It's all.
Yep, so you can hear, you know, the stereo field really just jumping back and forth, and this is really, you know, I'm exaggerating the effect so you can hear it, but when done subtly, it'll really widen up your vocal stereo field. And so I'm gonna decrease the volume a lot at about 15 dB, and just like what I did with the reverb, I'm gonna EQ out the delay signal here. By the way, you can achieve this effect with any stereo delay. There's always stock delay plugins in your DAW, so check them out. Essentially, you just need to set a very short time of about 100 millisecond to 150. Those are good times for slapback delay. Cool, so just like what I did with the reverb, I EQ'd out the wet signal of my slapback delay, and so it's not going to interfere with my original vocal signal. I'm getting rid of the mud here, and I tend to cut around 3 to 5K because that's where all the S's get through, the sibilance gets through, and usually reverb or delay, it sounds really cheap when the high frequencies are pulling through, and so I always make sure I cut around this area to kind of prevent the S's from getting through and being repeated. So here's what it sounds like now. I'm gonna go back to the same section.
All just to bless you. I just wanna move your heart. It's all I wanna do.
My computer is spazzing out right now. Yeah, so that really creates a nice space for your vocals. Without this effect, it sounds heavily in the center, and there's no really stereo imaging happening with your vocals. But once you introduce that slapback delay, it kind of creates a nice width and space for your vocals. So this is something I like to do subtly. This is even not that subtle, actually. This is pretty in the front. You can really hear the delay working. But I really like to introduce some subtle slapback delay on the vocals to create a nice width And so that was the 5 tips that I had for mixing vocals. I hope you found that useful. And so if you have anything you want to hear from me, you're curious about anything, you'd like for me to go over anything, I will check out those comments and make sure I cover those things. This is going to be a series, and so the plan is I'll go through each, instrument group and kind of go over what I do with them. So first we started with vocals. Maybe next one we'll cover electric guitar or something, or guitar in general. But let me know what you want me to go over and I'll check those out. I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you next time. Bye.